Hi, mate. Hope you're okay. First lesson back this week, so we're looking at still comparing and preparing to compare poems. This is possibly the last lesson of this preparation, so really do pay attention. Make sure you've got as much knowledge as you can. But at the end of this lesson, I've asked you to send me some questions if you need any more clarification about anything. So please don't hesitate to send me emails or post things on Google Classroom asking for help if you need it. Right, so the objective today is very straightforward. I want you to be sure and be really confident about comparing these two war poems so that when I set the assessment tomorrow, that you're ready to really go with it and you've got no worries about it. So here 8, this is a table of comparison that you have seen in a previous lesson. As you can see, it's got 3 columns. The first is the area for comparison column. So the things that you should be thinking about when you're comparing poetry. Now, I just want to make it really, really clear for you that although there are 7 different options here, I don't expect you to write about all 7 in your assignment or in your assessment. I'm looking for you to write about 3 or 4 different ones from this list. So don't feel you have to do every single one of them. Choose the ones that you are feeling most confident about, the ones you think you can write the most intelligent things about the poetry, the ones that make the most sense. Okay, so choose wisely. You don't have to do all 7. Obviously prepare and think about all 7, and then you can choose the best 3 or 4 to go with. So today though, we're going to go through all of them. So that means you've got a maximum opportunity to choose from. Right, so let's start us off. So the soldier, what's the main idea in the poem? Well, in the soldier, the main idea is that if an English soldier dies in battle, the place that they lie, the place where they are kind of buried in the battlefield, is turned into a piece of England forever. Okay, so that's kind of what this poem's about. Whereas the anthem for doomed youth, that's also about soldiers dying in battle, but it's much more negative. It's the sense that the soldiers are going to die, and all they know is the sound of war and the kind of the miserable situation that they're in. So both about the idea of dying in battle, but they are coming at it from very different perspectives. One has got the attitude that it's good and positive, and the other has gone for very negative. And that kind of matches up with the attitude of the poets as to war. So Brooke had an idea that war or dying in war was quite noble and patriotic. You know, it's the idea of fighting for your country is something that's kind of quite heroic. Whereas Wilfred Owen hated the war and the complete waste of human life that it caused. So again, both poets have got very different attitudes to war. One has got a kind of positive, patriotic view, where the other's got a very negative and very kind of heartbreakingly bitter attitude towards the war. The title of the soldier poem is obviously directly linked to what the poem's about. The poem is about a soldier, but it could be any soldier in the British Army. You know, it's not like a particular individual. It's quite generic. It could be any number of the thousands of soldiers who fought in that war. I suppose that kind of links the idea that any of the soldiers who, regardless of their kind of rank or their background, would have the same kind of sense of if they died in a battlefield, they would all have the same kind of effect on that landscape, with their kind of their deaths turning part of that field into a little bit of England. The title for Anthem for Doomed Youth is kind of quite ironic. So the word anthem is usually associated with some kind of celebratory song. And in this context of this poem, it's ironic. It's not about a celebration. It's about the opposite. It's very regretful, very kind of depressing. And the soldiers are the doomed youth who are going to die. So the language of the title is very, very bitter, sarcastic, indicating the kind of the attitude and the disgust that the writer has towards the war. The first line of the soldier sets up the central idea of the soldier dying in battle, and also the idea of how the grieving loved ones, the people back home, their family and friends, how they should feel in this event. The opening line of the Anthem for Doomed Youth raises a question, comparing the soldier's death to animals being slaughtered. So the first lines in both poems kind of create an attitude or a feeling that the rest of the poem will then develop. The contrast is that the one has got a kind of positive, patriotic tone to it, with Brooks' poem in The Soldier, and Wilfred Owen's Doomed Youth has got such a kind of horribly unpleasant start, which is symbolic of how unpleasant and horrible the war is. The ending of The Soldier is very peaceful, very tranquil. The idea of the soldier just lying in the ground thinking about how wonderful England is, as if that kind of idea, thoughts and feeling makes up for the sacrifice. It's worth dying for your country, as if your country is England, especially so. So very, very positive, although it's in a very kind of sad event. The end of Doomed Youth, however, is possibly also quite surprising considering how the poem starts. It ends with a very kind of peaceful, tranquil, poignant image of the sun setting and of the idea of drawing blinds on a window. It's very quiet, very tranquil, as if that's how you should remember the soldiers that have died, not with fanfares or anthems and music and sound, but the opposite of that, ending with real silence, so you can remember the soldiers, think about their sacrifice in a peaceful, silent, kind of respectful way. Both poems have got a rhyme, and the rhyme has an effect. The Soldier one's quite interesting in terms of the use of the rhyme pattern of A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, which those first 8 lines, the octet, are using an English sonnet rhyme pattern, where the sestet, the EFG, EFG, is an Italian sonnet rhyme pattern. So the rhyme is a combination of English and Italian sonnets, which kind of matches really nicely with the theme of the poem, that the idea that something can be made a little bit more English. The idea of something foreign becoming English is what the Soldier poem is all about. So by using an Italian sonnet pattern that has a little bit of English in it, kind of represents the big idea in the poem. So it's really clever use of the rhyme pattern there. Doomed Youth has got a different pattern. It goes A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, F, E, G, G. And the last 6 lines are not typical of a sonnet. So the first 8 lines in both poems, really similar. But in Doomed Youth, the last 6 lines kind of go in a different direction. The key area is the E, F, F, E section, which is lines 7, 8. Hang on, no, it's not. It's lines 7, lines 9, 10, 11, and 12. Sorry. That pattern there is not expected, that use of those 4 lines. And then the poem ends with a couplet, the GG. I think the couplet's probably the more interesting or more useful one to write about, because ending on a couplet really emphasises the sense of an ending, like it being over. So it's kind of symbolic of the deaths that the soldiers have experienced, that their lives are over. This poem ends with a very strong feeling of an ending. That couplet creates that effect. The Soldier is a sonnet, and the sonnets, as we know, are traditionally about love. The soldier in this poem loves his country, happy to die fighting for it. So it's a really quite an appropriate form to express these feelings of loving your country and kind of dying fighting for it. Anthem for Doomed Youth also is a sonnet, but this time it's being used in a much more ironic or sarcastic way. The poem's an anti-sonnet. It breaks against the idea of love, and it's more about the idea of hating the death that the war is causing. So that's the kind of way you compare the use of form. One is very traditional, and love is the main focus, and the effect that's created, whereas the other one is very kind of ironic and sarcastic, and rejecting the idea of love because the situation is so horrible. And I'm going to draw your attention to kind of some of the the kind of the bigger parts of the comparison. So we've gone through the grid, but I'm just going to zoom in on a couple of things. So the first one is main ideas and the poet's attitude. So what Wilfred Owen is kind of banging on about throughout his poem on the Anthem for Doomed Youth is that war is awful. So some of the lines that you might want to use to really emphasize and explore that meaning and that point are on the board now. So we've got the description of the sound of war as a demented choirs of wailing shells. You've got the kind of attitude or the emotion of war, the monstrous anger of the guns, and the kind of the spluttering, stuttering sound of the rifles, rapid rattle. So in those lines, you've got quite a few really interesting phrases to work with. You've got personification. Okay, so the anger, the monstrous anger of the guns gives the guns a personality. So that's personification. We have, again, personification of the shells, which are the kind of explosive bombs that are being fired at the soldiers. They're wailing, suggests pain and emotional upset. And demented suggests the idea of insane, kind of lost their mind. So really kind of negative mental and emotional description here. Where the rifle's rapid rattle, you'll notice the use of alliteration to kind of make those three words stand out. Kind of the non-stop, really fast firing of machine guns and rifles that the soldiers hear throughout the day. So 3 quotes there, each one with a different kind of focus in terms of the attitude and the ideas about war. We've got, like I said, emotion, kind of personification ideas, and we've got the kind of alliteration creating the sound of war. With Rupert Brooke's The Soldier, like we said, that the idea and the attitude in that poem is that dying in war is patriotic. So these are some of the words and phrases that really work with that particular idea. First of all, in that rich earth, a richer dust concealed. So there's that repetition of the idea of rich, meaning value, quality, status. The idea that dying in a foreign field raises the price, the quality of that particular dust. Okay. Dust obviously could be a reference to the funeral service, the earth to earth, ashes to ashes, earth to earth, ashes to dust to dust. That I'm not sure if I've got that exactly right, but the idea that word is kind of used in funerals kind of brings the idea of death into this poem quite strongly. The idea that dying in a foreign field, alliteration there on the F's, creates a sense of forever England. So we've got the F sounds here being repeated: foreign, field, and forever. So you've got the kind of emphasis or highlighting of the idea using alliteration, a bit like we had with the rifle's rapid rattle in the previous one, and the kind of idea of the patriotic sense that this soldier is a product of England because that English air, he's been in English water, and he's been kind of able to be touched by the English sun of home. So a sense of real English quality that's kind of made this soldier into everything that he is. I think language-wise, you might be interested to look at the word blessed, because that suggests like it's like almost like a gift from God. Being English is kind of almost like a gift from the heavens. So some really positive phrases and ideas there. In contrast, really negative and awful ideas in Anthem for Doomed Youth. So hopefully that's helped you think about how you could compare the big ideas and the poet's attitude in these poems. Moving forward, we're going to look at the first lines of these poems. So in Anthem for Doomed Youth, the first line is, what passing bells flows to Dies cattle. You've got the kind of simile of the idea of these soldiers being just animals being led to slaughter. The other thing about cattle is that they are raised for slaughter. It's not just the idea that these soldiers their entire existence, just like cattle they've been born and bred in order to become meat, to feed the war machine. So that's a kind of really negative use of language. That simile is really powerful. The passing bells will be the kind of the sound of bells ringing to celebrate the soldiers, but also cattle bell as well. So there's a kind of link between the sound of the bells that the soldiers might hear as a celebration of them returning, but also the bells that cows and cattle would have on them, really emphasizing the slaughter that's going on in the war. And a question marker there at the end to kind of create a sense of, well, what is the point? What is the reason for this? The confusion. The poet feels like the pointlessness of what the war represents and what's happening out there. So a very, very negative opening first line, which the rest of the poem will just continue to develop this kind of negative pointlessness, the horrible experiences of what the war is doing to these soldiers. Whereas with The Soldier by Brooke, the opening line really brings the main idea of what the poem's about, is the idea of what happens if the soldier dies. Interestingly, we've got the word if at the beginning of this line, so it's not a definite. This could happen. It's quite a positive idea, really, that it's not guaranteed he's going to die, this soldier. It could happen, but it's not definite. And it's about addressing the family that are left behind, the people who are sad that he's died, trying to help that family have a kind of positive thought about the loss of his life. So, like all sonnets, both poems are first lines that set up the rest of the poem. The rest of the poem will deal with the ideas that have been established in the first lines. With the last lines, all poets, what they're trying to do is finish on some kind of closing idea or image that's going to be kind of left for the reader to think about long after they finish the poem. So it's going to be a little bit of impact at the end. And we'll start with Anthem for Doomed Youth again. Here we've got this kind of slow, kind of drawn out ending. The use of the D sound in the alliteration of dusk, a drawing down of blinds. There's even a little bit of hint of a D there. This whole line has got D sounds kind of flowing through it, which kind of give it a kind of a thudding, plodding, slow sound. And each slow dusk, a drawing down of blinds. So really kind of almost like the brakes are being put on as the poet makes us really slow down and remember the soldiers that have died, these young men that have died in battle. The End of the Soldier by Brooke finishes with the image of the heart at peace. So there's no kind of restlessness, there's no kind of bitterness, there's no kind of bad feeling. The heart is at peace in the ground. Rest in peace is what's often seen on graves under an English heaven. The idea that the heart of the soldier in the ground that is buried in is underneath this corner of a field that is now English. The idea that's made the heart of the soldier peaceful and having a rest now that it's as close to heaven as possible, which is English heaven. Okay, really patriotic idea at the end of the poem to match what's been going on throughout the work so far. So both poets end with a kind of powerful image or a powerful effect that's meant to make the reader think. With Doomed Youth, we've got a kind of slow, very melancholy, very depressing final thought of a sunset and the lights going out, whereas in The Soldier we have a kind of positive, peaceful view of death, with the soldier kind of resting happily under his piece of English heaven in a foreign field. So what remains now is any questions now. If you've got any questions, obviously, please email or use Google Classroom to get them to me so I can reply to you. And there's no tough questions. Any question is a good question. and it's important that you do ask questions if you've got any concerns or you're not quite sure of what you're going to do before the assessment, because obviously then you can do the assessment much better. So have a think about what questions you might want to ask me, send them to me, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks for your rate. Take care.